Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman here with Chris McNulty, and to his side, Chris McNulty.
Thank you, Mark. So today's episode was recorded live earlier this month at SharePoint Fest in Chicago. Mark and I spent most of the week meeting and talking with users, developers, MVPs, IT, business users. In addition to our usual Ask Microsoft Anything section, we actually decided to bring the Intrazone as a live recording to the conference attendees, which is a first for us.
Yeah, it was great. Live and on stage, and we invited a number of our friends in the community, some MVPs, experts all around across a whole bunch of technologies, to join us when people had an Ask Me, Ask MVP, Ask McNulty, Ask Microsoft Anything.
And so we sat down with Sarah Hasse, Wes Preston, Drew Medelung, and Treb Gott. We thought it was a great way to wrap up our first year of the Intrazone by asking the panelists and asking our audience to reflect on the year and make some predictions for the year to come.
Yeah, we thought across the four of them, and of course adding to the two of us, that we'd be able to span a lot of different technologies, workloads, spots and pieces of SharePoint, Office 365, and beyond. We tapped into their expertise, both as strategists, evangelists, their solution designers and architects, and of course, in leading up to what did they think about 2018, and as we lead into what do they hope for and dream in 2019.
So thanks for listening. Keep streaming. And here is our Intrazone in Chicago broadcast. Live from McCormick Place in Chicago and SharePoint Fest, it's the Intrazone. It's our special end-of-the-year episode with predictions, our esteemed panel of experts, prizes galore, and more. So now, let's welcome our hosts, Mark Cashman and me, Chris McNulty.
Hey! That was some wonderful hosting of yourself.
Thank you very much.
And excellent wind, by the way. We may do a wind cue later, so keep it in mind.
We're here in Chicago, end of the year, SharePoint Fest. Mark, what are some of your impressions that you've had here this week?
Some excellent pizza, some excellent walking around, and of course at the event, a lot of great interaction. I wasn't here as long as you, and certainly I know a lot of the speakers also coming directly from Copenhagen, and there was a lot of learnings. A lot of people were asking questions specific to news, specific to SharePoint sites, obviously a lot around roadmap. What are we doing? Will you be doing multilingual? Will you be supporting X and Y that was on premises? What does that look like in the cloud? So it was a pretty varied, but very engaged and a really great event so far.
You know, this has been a real journey this year for SharePoint Modern and making pages. You know, there's still a couple of our lookbooks scattered here about the room. For those of you listening to this online, we'll have a link to where to download your own copy in the show notes. Chicago is a lovely city, but the city is noted for its architecture, and I think it's appropriate for us to come here and kind of consider all the things that we've done to create this fantastic look and feel throughout the product in a city that's really known for being a pioneer in design and in visual cutting edge. The Prairie School and all the things that we know are from the area, it's just wonderful to walk around and soak it up. Whether you're at the Art Institute or, down by the river, it's just a fantastic place. Let's get introducing our panel. Let's keep running.
All right. So we have an esteemed panelist of people that have been presenting here as subject matter experts. And we're not going to pigeon you into a certain specific field or workload, but we want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience here at the Fest. And we'll start with Sarah Hasse. I think a lot of people think in terms of you around user adoption, organizing their content, maybe on the context of if you were a librarian in the enterprise, how you might best support the rest of the enterprise. But tell us a little about who Sarah is and then your experience here at the Fest.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Hasse. I tend to work for relatively large enterprises, really helping them to drive enterprise governance plans for SharePoint and Office 365, as well as user adoption, which really means getting the end users educated, knowledgeable about the platform, and help support their efforts to adopt it to really build business solutions that work and drive value to the bottom line of the company. So it's really about inviting them to participate, energizing them, and helping them get excited about the platform. So here at SharePoint Fest, very busy week, but really talking about those centralized themes. So presentations on user adoption, reclaiming maybe some environments or implementations of SharePoint that didn't go quite as they would have liked. And then talking about SharePoint hub sites, which is always exciting, but really taking a bent not just on hub sites, but if you work for an enterprise or a large company, what you might need to do to govern your usage of those hub sites to make sure that you're really making the most out of them.
And my bet is that you had a lot of people with a lot of aha moments or ahasi moments. Where people were discovering, what, I didn't know you could do that. Sorry.
I'm going to use that one.
I'll be hearing that one for years. Thank you.
But my impression is probably after a lot of your sessions, you had a lot of engaged questions from people who just didn't realize that you could organize in that fashion, especially in the cloud, but maybe even with SharePoint.
I actually did, and I see a bunch of them in the audience. You know, it just so happens that I am very fortunate because I get to talk about the fun stuff, and I really mean the fun stuff, because user adoption done well should be engaging, should be fun. So oftentimes I love the fact that those people who are coming up and asking me questions about user adoption are just so enthusiastic and so excited to be able to be here and talk about these ideas.
Awesome. Applause. So to Sarah's left is Wes Preston. And Wes, again, not to pigeon you into only this, but I know you focus a lot recently on Power Apps, building forms that you can be proud of, and certainly a lot that goes behind building those Power Apps so that they're then functional and workable. And you've been doing this for a while in terms of bringing the mindset from classic to modern. Tell us a little about your journey from classic to modern, or are you still classic Wes?
I still do a lot of classic stuff.
All right, so share maybe a little bit about what you've shared here at the conference, but maybe then also a little bit more about what you do more day to day.
Sure. At the conference, I focused a lot on the interaction between Power Apps and SharePoint, and that came from the background of working on business solutions. So it was really more about working with businesses, working with teams, working with all the way down to the department level on what folks do every day in their business, and figuring out how can we improve on that. And it starts with the business side, without the technology, and then we look at it from the technology side in terms of can we use SharePoint, can we use Power Apps, and then should we use either of those solutions to make their lives easier, just to do things easier. So because of that, we've been doing that for years with just SharePoint, with lists, with a lot of the out-of-the-box capabilities. But Power Apps falls squarely into that realm, into that arena. So that's where we're spending a lot of our time. We're really excited about where it is today, but also knowing that we're at that rapid growth, maturing point in the product of Power Apps. So we're excited to see where it's going to go.
And I noticed one of the stickers that you have is MVP.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I know that
MVP.
we've got a number of MVPs here. But when people see that, and maybe just to answer on behalf of all MVPs, what does that bring when you're at a conference?
That's a lot of pressure.
An MVP speaker.
No pressure.
To me, it means that you've been a part of the community and that you're a community contributor. I think it can easily be associated with someone who is a technical expert in many or all aspects of the technology, but to me, it's really about folks that have a background, have a good experience behind them, but spend a considerable amount of their time helping with the community in all kinds of different ways.
Well, I'm going to do I'm going to maybe pretend that we're in the Tron movie and we just all got sucked into some digital format and think in these terms, MVP for you might be most valuable Power App. You are the most valuable Power App.
Right.
Power Up. So
let's move on to our
That's
left.
a Hazy moment right there.
Yeah, to our left, your right, and to those of you listening in your car from exactly the same place, it's Drew. Drew, take a moment to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so thank you guys. My name is Drew Madelung. I help with a lot of companies. So I work with, I'm a consultant, and I work with really companies from all different scales. I've worked with some very small ones and some incredibly large ones. And my background comes from the IT pro side. So I came from managing devices, managing servers, managing network, and I have now shifted to cloud enablement and really Office 365 enablement. So I help companies really strategize around that, how we're going to get from some of their current situations up into the cloud, right? Up into Office 365, and particularly my background is in SharePoint and OneDrive, and a lot really on that content structure and how those things are going to move, and then really how that works.
So, and where's home for you?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
So everyone's from the great north here. Yes.
good claps from Milwaukee.
Go Wisconsin.
You know, Mark, I know we have some Bears and Hawks questions coming up. We're going to have to work the Bucks in somehow. Mark's always afraid I'm going to turn this entire show into sports radio.
I thought we would just do a cheer for the Red Wings. Yeah.
And we can silence the crowd that 3 of us up here are Packer fans.
Whoa. That's
Hang on.
That's where it went.
Uh-oh, here we go. Sound.
Go Packers.
Whoa. So when you think of deployment, obviously you think of getting people into the cloud. I know that most recently you've been focused a lot on OneDrive. How would you summarize at scale moving from either file servers, legacy SharePoint, or other into the cloud specific to the OneDrive workload?
I personally think that OneDrive is one of the key enablers because it is how users are going to get to your files in the future and or at any point in time. And the ability and the power that OneDrive has in getting users there as one of the first workloads in there, that is a very powerful tool for users to get content in and access it from all of their devices at any point and anywhere. And there's a lot of technology to kind of support you to get your content up there. Known folder move is one of the best enhancements that's kind of come out of the content space in a while for me. So I really am trying to work with people on enabling that stuff, getting known folder move turned on so your files are always in the cloud. Because when you start with your files in the cloud and start in OneDrive, you're going to be in a better spot than you would if you're on your desktop.
Excellent.
Wrapping up, certainly, for those of you listening at home, the snazziest dresser up here in the panel right now. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Treb Gott, originally from Louisiana, hence the name is not spelled the way it's pronounced. And my background is actually in data, or as I like to say, we help people make better decisions using Microsoft technology. My background is basically in the project management space, used to manage project management tools at Starbucks Corporate, worked at Microsoft for a while, worked at Wachovia Bank. Remember that little bank that used to be here before Wells took them over? And even though we have spent the week taking people on a journey with Power BI, in fact, Power BI has become a standalone track at a SharePoint conference. It's amazing. We spent the first day in a workshop taking them through how to use the tool. We talked about how to mine data on Wednesday. Yesterday, we scared people with the 5 big trends that are coming in BI. And today, we talked about report server. But at the end of the day, no matter what technology...
I'm sorry, did you say report server?
Power BI report server. Some people have to stay on-prem. It's the reality. I get it. But again, if you're not making better decisions, then it doesn't really matter what technology we throw at it. And so that's been the emphasis this week. And it's very, very pleasing to see so many people in the SharePoint space interested in data and getting value out of the data we've been capturing and managing with SharePoint. So I'm very happy to be here and talk more about this.
Excellent. And it's listed, I think, on your website as you promote yourself. You help companies bring order to their information chaos.
Yes.
How long does that take to put order in chaos?
Well, it depends because we're drowning in spreadsheets, essentially. No matter what happens, we revert back to Excel when faced with anything new. The typical journey can be anywhere from 3 to 9 months. A lot of it is coming to agreement as to basic terms as to what are we talking about? Is a product across the company? Do we have common keys? Are we having the same conversation? And so once we have some basic agreement, you can start to build out from there. Mm-hmm. And what I tell people is don't just take the report you have today, because it's no longer about writing more reports. We don't need more reports. We need better decisions. So we need to start from a different place. Start from the conversations, from the social aspects, determine the decisions you need to make, and then create the content to support it. It's a completely different way of looking at this. Otherwise, if you're familiar with Jackson Pollock, the artist, used to paint by throwing, paint at the canvas and a masterpiece would appear. And I propose that that's how we've been building reports for years. We throw data at you until you go away. But we don't really know if we're solving the problem or answering the questions you have. So this is our time to rethink and really add more value to the organization.
Awesome. So round of applause, and I think you'll see in the Windy City.
Yes, with the very popular scarf handout.
You too can get a scarf with his logo on it. I would highly encourage you. Very comfortable scarves. All right, so moving us along, what I think a lot of people are here to hear from you, from your specific workloads or beyond, because you all cover a lot of things, is what's coming for 2019. We're at the tail end of 2018. We've learned a lot about both what we've shipped, what you've built on top, and the smart information that you're sharing with your customers and maybe other partners to train the trainer. But as you look into 2019, what predictions can you make? Now, you can't break any NDAs, You all may know a few things based on things that
That's
we've
my
shared.
job usually.
Yeah, Chris is going to be the one that gets us in trouble. You can always blame Microsoft. But Sarah, starting with you, what is one thing that you see that's most likely going to happen in 2019?
I'm actually going to highlight something that we had a great discussion about in my session yesterday. And that is really hub sites. Hub sites were released in March of 2018, right? So a lot of organizations, I think, are just starting to try and really understand what hub sites may mean for them in SharePoint Online. They're really trying to unpack where they can start, maybe putting together a few hub sites to serve as calling cards or examples and prototypes. But really what I brought up in my session this week is, are we thinking about enterprise governance or how we want to use hub sites? Are we thinking about how we want to name them, how we want to organize them? How do you align individual sites to hubs, knowing that you could only assign a site to one hub at a time, right? So how do we organize our hubs and sites, and how can we repaint how we think about hubs as being a logical tie, bringing families of sites together as opposed to a physical construct like site collections. And one of the things that I recommend looking at is really almost taking a mind mapping approach. Back in the day, when we talked about SharePoint sites, we would talk about hierarchies, and we draw them out in a pyramid structure in terms of site collections and parent and child sites. With hubs, I think a mind map philosophy works better, where you really have a central idea or theme, and then you've got SharePoint sites that are all connected to that in different ways. And it's a visual construct to be able to think about those hub sites differently. I think in 2019, hub sites are going to be huge in terms of people suddenly thinking about what they can do with them and realizing that they need to think about it organizationally and not just as at a point of use.
I was just going to say, it sounds like you're saying in 2019, it's going to help the organizing the organizers for the organization.
Yep. Wow.
Moving from the broader context of hub sites in 2019, Wes, what do you see happening in 2019 as something that people should expect or should at least strongly think about?
My focus is generally on the Power Apps space right now. What I'm seeing and what I'm hoping for in the next year is that it's going to be kind of a year of maturing for Power Apps. You know, there was a good chunk of time where we were pushing out lots of new functionality, pushing out the ties between the different platforms. And so we've got some solid first steps, but there's still frustrations, there's still hesitancy to use the platform, there's still people experimenting with it, where we need to get kind of over some of those early humps. And I see that as being a lot of what's going to happen in 2019. Just maturation of the product, maturation of the community, lots of that.
I think it's fair to say that, I mean, Power Apps is, as of last October, 2 years old. And some of our children go through terrible twos. I think that's spot on.
There's certainly sweet spots right now where people are loving it. But I think there's many more areas where people want to love it, but it's not quite there yet. And I see a lot of those things that people are stumbling on being hopefully resolved in the next year.
Okay.
Terrific.
So, Drew, again, not to paint you into the OneDrive corner, but if you represent the power of the individual, what do you see OneDrive doing next, or what people should be more doing in 2019?
Really what I see on the OneDrive side is people using it more. It might be the basic answer, but being here at SharePoint Fest and presenting on OneDrive, a lot of the conversations I have, people aren't actually using it yet, or not using it in a way that they could. And a lot of that is going to be around how we fully enable the sync, getting the sync client to everyone, letting people know really what's possible, letting people know that things like files restore is a capability that you can utilize. A lot of it's around awareness and adoption and keeping people in the loop of what you can do with OneDrive, and letting them know that you can, for example, even sync SharePoint libraries. People don't know that. I've talked to some people, and it's just you click the sync button, and they didn't even know it was there. So enabling that a little bit more, getting OneDrive deployed out, and having larger awareness campaigns internally, I think is going to be something we see a lot more inside of the companies that we work with.
Yeah, and a lot of times we get the feedback from customers and even partners who are helping our customers when you have a nice managed rollout that is not only going to help them get to the cloud, but then help them be successful after they land there. That's a whole huge part of what a lot of partners are offering. I know our fast track offerings focus on use and adoption. And at scale, getting everybody aware that you can click the sync button means a lot. It means a lot.
Well, a lot of people that I talk to say, we've deployed OneDrive, and that all that means is that they've kind of looked at the admin center, made a configuration change, and said, we're good. But that's not really enabling OneDrive. That's not driving the adoption and figuring out different ways to keep your users aware of what you really can do and really empowering them, especially when you talk about some of those sharing capability. Getting people to have their content in OneDrive and SharePoint and utilizing the out-of-the-box sharing, which is a wonderful thing, such as like the one-time passcode is an amazing tool to share content. And letting people know that that's possible and letting users and having the configuration at the IT side with the trust set up, your users will be in a better place. So I see that happening more. I see more sharing, and I see people being in OneDrive and having their content up there at a much higher scale than it is today.
Wonderful.
And let's wrap up. Tread, what do you see in store for 2019?
And please use your best predictive analytic data model.
Best predictive analytic model with my radio voice. Okay, actually, I foresee a lot of what I would call chaos at light speed. And I say that jokingly because we're at our early teen years in the data analytics space. And I think a lot of companies for the first time are going to really be tying together a lot of data that they've never tried to tie together before. And for the first time, they're going to see what a mess it is. But, stay true to the course, it will get better. And I think that once we start getting the data rationalized, we start analyzing the AI that I see coming, which I'm really excited about. Toward the end of 2019, we're going to be just blown away by what we can do with this stuff. So again, I think it's going to be a little dark in the early days, but it's going to get much brighter as we get toward the end of the year.
Quick question for the panel, so we can just go bum, 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 bum. SharePoint 2019, the first piece of next year, has already shipped. And with Modern coming finally to an on-premises platform, do you see SharePoint 19 being bigger than SharePoint 2016, holding its own, or going down as more people move to the cloud?
I think it's going to be bigger, but it's going to take a while. I've had several conversations this week about people that are still not sure how to get from classic to modern from a SharePoint perspective. I think that 2019 is going to push that model, and people are really going to start to feel a lot of urgency that they have to figure out how to get there because it's the future.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Wes?
Yeah, I think similar to other releases, there's more and more in the platform that's kind of pulling people along in terms of, hey, there's this new feature, another reason to try and catch up with the latest and greatest. I think the tie with the cloud is, as we've gone from 2013, 2016, 2019, that tie has gotten tighter and tighter in a good way. So I think it continues, and I think it just pulls people along a little bit faster, which is good.
And I've talked to multiple people here, but in the last couple of months about how we get to 2019. So there are plenty of people that are still on premises, and that's completely okay. So there are still strategies to get to 2019. I think it will be slightly different depending on how big of a configuration, let's say on a branding side that you've done in a classic look and feel, that the move to 2019 will cause could be a challenge. It could be different trying to get users with the new UI if they're only used to the classic experience. So I do see it being a giant product. Plenty of people want to get to it, and because they're excited. We want to get to the modern experience, and we want to figure out the strategies of how we move to that, both from a technical aspect of an upgrade, but then from an adoption standpoint and a visual standpoint, so people know that it's coming.
Treb?
From our client perspective, I've only got one that's looking at 2019. A lot of them are experiencing fatigue from trying to keep up with the new life cycles, and it's pushing people toward the cloud, and they're much happier there. So what I'm seeing right now is I think it's going to be perfect for my 2013 clients that are still want to stay on-prem, but I'm seeing a lot more people still going to the cloud no matter what.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you all for being on the panel. I know two of you need to head out, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that these are great supporters of the community, obviously great supporters of the event. And if we could give them a nice Windy City round of applause.
It says goal on my sound effects button here.
Like Google?
So
Yeah, it sounds more of a goal.
right? Now, you are here to ask the questions that you weren't able to answer throughout the event, or if there was something during the event that just wasn't clear, whether it was from Microsoft or from one of the speakers. We know that sometimes even a 70 or 40-minute session, you can't get across everything, or maybe not every question was answered. So our promise to you is that we will answer any questions that you have as best we can, And we've got Drew and Treb to round out some additional workload expertise. But if you have a question, if it's directed at one of us or just generally speaking, we'll do our best in the next 10 minutes to answer any questions that you have. We do ask that if you can come up to the microphone so we can hear you, and then we'll continue from there. And then the other promise is we have questions for you as well. So that's the AYA. We'll start with the AMA.
Hi, I'm Patty Sedgwick, and I'm here representing local government.
Hi, Patty.
Contrary to popular belief, some folks in government are very excited to move forward. And right now, we feel like we're being held backwards. So my question is, what is the standard release time frame or timing for enhancements or between enhancements and application exposure between government cloud and commercial cloud?
Yeah, great question.
So it's a fantastic question. So thanks for asking that. For those of you who are dealing with our regular commercial clouds, Microsoft offers other clouds around the world for government organizations. And here in the US, there's something we have called GCC, which is for the civilian government organizations, federal, state, and local. It's where their services are. They go through additional compliance and scrubbing to get releases out there. So the general rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of additional time. There are some places where we know that there's features, for instance, Power Apps and Flow, which were released 2 years ago, which are just now moving into the GCC cloud. So there is a process right now where you can ask that they be turned on for your tenant in GCC. They haven't finished certification yet. The time frame for that looks like January for finishing certification and availability. I would also say we know we need to do a better job on that. And there is a team that's working at narrowing that gap between availability of commercial services and government services. There are a few other clouds that we license that deal with things like US Department of Defense and 3-letter agencies and clouds that we operate in Germany, that we license in Germany and in China, where there could be additional time periods going on with that. But for most government organizations in the US, 3 to 6 months is our goal. Terrific.
All right.
Panel, what prize do we have here?
Socks.
Socks.
2 socks.
Hey.
SharePoint socks.
SharePoint
Thank you very much, Patty. Who's next?
Hi, my name is Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. As we know, security is pretty important, obviously. And specifically, we're looking at ways to automate using Flow. One of the ways that we're building security is through multi-factor authentication. The question is, as far as we know, Flow doesn't really play well with MFA. So wondering what's on the roadmap for that, and also kind of in general, how do we continue to balance the security side with the business side, which is Office 365?
So the quick answer is we know that there's more to do in MFA and look for releases for that in 2019. Our philosophy is we want to put creative tools in as many people's hands as possible. We 20 years ago, 30 years ago, data scientists would have said, we can't let everyday users build a matrix of numbers and do their own math and make their own conclusion. We should run Excel. Well, IT doesn't run Excel. And very soon, IT doesn't need to run every process. They need to govern it. So our philosophy is making sure we give you the right tools to ensure that data processes flow between approved locations, with approved controls, with visibility and reporting. Still more work to do there. You're totally right. But panel, what do we get? What do we give for this?
Shirt, for sure.
Shirt.
That was shirt worthy.
Shirt. Have a OneDrive shirt.
Also, want to let you know, as your second part, the full answer is actually a podcast we recently did that we titled The Security and Compliance Blanket of Microsoft 365. And we talk a lot about the security and compliance offerings with experts in that field for people that work specifically with SharePoint and OneDrive and also at the data center level.
Thanks,
so
Jason.
last question, and then we would love to bring up Rachel so that she can share her story around the use of Office 365 and SharePoint and maybe many other things from Rockwell Automation. Last question.
Hi, I'm Byron, and I am with a Fortune 500 company, and I'm kind of stuck in the purgatory between 2013 on-prem and an online experience. I've got access to Designer and InfoPath and on-prem, but our IT organization is very busy, so I'm a power user. IT organization is very busy. They don't have time to truly get their feet wet with the online. And so they've turned off Flow, they've turned off Power Apps, pretty much everything. So one thing is a request that for Microsoft or some partner, maybe you guys could do governance in a box where you could have like a low and a medium and a Darth Vader, where IT departments could pick a governance if they're too busy to do it themselves. But anyway, my real question is for Power Apps and Flow, are those aimed at the power users or are they strictly developer type tools?
Well, they were originally intended to be for the power user. And I think for many things that you can do, they really are intended. I remember one of the early demos was an inventory app. Because how many people get to walk around with a spreadsheet or a piece of paper tracking down inventory every year or every quarter or whatnot? Tracking expenses on a project, for example, was another one. How many times do you have to go through and do your reconciliation for that kind of stuff? It's to help you automate those things. So yes, I think it is still targeted to the power user, especially Flow as well. Now, governance in a box, we should talk. I know a partner that does that. So there are some offerings for that as well.
Great answer.
We would like to bring up Rachel Davis.
So Rachel, welcome to the IntraZone.
Thanks.
So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience here in the room and listening at home or in office or car or gym or wherever they happen to plug into the IntraZone podcast.
Sure. So my name is Rachel Davis. I am pretty sure the only person at Rockwell who is not in IT whose job description includes the word SharePoint. Woo. My background is in Russian literature. I got my start in data management doing oncology clinical trials in medicine. And
that's a leap. Wow. So you go from, Samizdat and the Solzhenitsyn writing of the 70s and earlier.
Oh, you pulled out a Solzhenitsyn reference. Chris.
And then to get into oncology.
And then I did also study classical Greek, so that made the oncology easier because that's, all Greek.
And so you figured that it was all too easy, so you would turn to Power Apps next.
Those 300 patients and all those sponsors and regulatory stuff, that was way too easy. That got me into the content management. The question of, so we had a lot of regulatory requirements from the FDA for new studies and new procedures and things like that. We had, so when you get a new version of something, how do you get it to the physician? Because, of course, if they use the wrong version of a study protocol with a patient, that's a violation that then causes me to do paperwork. And that's not happening. So there was a lot of content management. This was way back in 2001, 2002. There was no SharePoint. And then I had a career change and found SharePoint.
Let's give a little windy wind for SharePoint.
Had I only had SharePoint. And then I found SharePoint and I found home. And so now I do SharePoint.
So let's just share a little bit about where home is now from a work perspective. I've scraped a little bit of information, but you'll fill in some blanks. So
okay.
Rockwell Automation, American provider of industrial automation and information products.
Yep. And we make blinky lights too.
Based in Milwaukee, but obviously employed around 80 countries worldwide. And if I've got the number right, it's 22,000 people. Maybe you've grown since I got this number.
That's the number we use off the top of our head.
Pretty sizable organization.
Pretty good size.
And then a little more scrape of information. It seems like you are very focused on change management.
I am, yes.
Being an evangelist for new tech.
I am enthusiastic.
And that you have a strong communications background.
I do, in several languages.
So where does that all lead you for the types of projects you've been taking on for Rockwell?
So my focus, certainly the last 6 months, a year, with my users really has been, oh, good God, please stop pushing the return to classic button. And it's really been trying to get people, so at Rockwell we have a lot of engineers. Engineers like things that they don't do well with ambiguity. My job is to save them from the ambiguity. That's my job. I save them from the ambiguity. They don't like ambiguity. They like a sure thing. They like to know what's where they're going to find it, how to expect it. So the ribbon, they loved that because all the buttons were there all the time. And all they had to do was figure out why it was grayed out. So moving to the modern for them was a lot of ambiguity because the buttons disappear entirely. So now what I'm spending a lot of time doing is going back and finding all those libraries where they push that default view classic thing and going, come along, people, come along. I had somebody last month, I walked into the meeting, and the first words out of this girl's mouth were, I hate SharePoint. And I said, okay, well, we can work with that. And I said, so let me just show you a few things. And at the end of the meeting, I got her to, that was kind of cool. I hate it less now.
Chris and I sort of represent owning getting the word out, right? We have big press releases. We do lots of big events, lots of big conferences. And still, a lot of big customers will come on campus and sit a lot of days with Microsoft. And at the end of our sessions, come up and tell us the same exact thing. I didn't know SharePoint could do that. I didn't know it looked that way. Or I didn't know I could get from left to right. The fact that you have mobile by default in team sites and communication sites and hub sites that you didn't have to resource or finance, that's usually a big eye opener for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, so I like Teams. Teams is great. I like the fact that I can have my laptop open. I can be, and this happened to me yesterday. I was having a chat with someone in Teams. My session ended. Not that I would multitask during a session, but I mean, you know what happened. Anyway, slammed the laptop shut, tucked it under my arm, grabbed my phone, and continued my conversation with this person in Teams. It was, I love that. I mean, that being said, as a manufacturing company, we really still are tied to our desktops. The mobile stuff for us is spiffy, but it's wow, that's cool. Mm-hmm. And then they get out their laptops again.
We want to give you the opportunity, and I think we call this an AMA, but I think for your particular piece of feedback, if I understand correctly, it might be an Ask McNulty anything. What is your hope for the future? What is something that you want to tell my friend over here, but we'll both listen?
Here's what I would like. When my director comes to me and says, Rachel, I need a workflow to do a thing. I'm a power user. I'm not in IT. I do not have access to service accounts or anything like that. I want to be able to go to a site and create a workflow that lives on the site, is part of the site, so that email notifications on that workflow come from the site, not Rachel Davis, because I don't know what this. The last thing I need is all of Gerhardt's email notifications coming from me, because I don't need that. And I want it to be like a designer workflow where it's attached to the site. Site owners can go in and see on their site what workflows are working or not, but have it be Flow, because Flow is pretty and easy.
So, great question. First and foremost, we've already given you half of that. So you can take a flow and inside of the Flow Designer say that this is going to be owned by the list or library it's running against, so that you don't have to have it run in your personal credentials. It can belong from a security level there. Now, there's a lot more that we need to do in terms of connection control, things like impersonation, which we know is a behavior that people had in SharePoint Designer, but being able to send an email on behalf of someone else so you can bring that process along. We know we have more work to do.
I'll be happy if it just comes from a no-reply SharePoint email address. I'll be perfectly happy with that. I don't want it to be Rachel Davis.
I think that's totally fair, but thank you very much for your question. Rachel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, so the next thing that you're going to get is something you might not have expected. It wasn't on the list of things that we'd be doing. Because it is the holiday season, we want to leave you with a SharePoint poem. This is titled, "'Twas the Night Before SharePoint." This is a short, teamwork-filled reminisce of a cross-geo collaborative Christmas. So, here we go. "'Twas the night before SharePoint, and all through the cloud, not an Office 365 user was stirring, no mouse clicks were loud. Hub sites, team sites, communication sites were governed throughout the intranet with care, in hopes that Jeff Teeper soon would be there. Merry employees sent their last email attachments as smart links, while visions of managed metadata danced in their OLED dry eye blinks. When out in my Office 365 admin center there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my Herman Miller Aeron chair to check on the feature update matter. Away from my Windows 10 terminal, I flew in a dash, my Office 365 admin app in hand, searching for that one user who was still using Adobe Flash. But when what to my roadmap-weary eyes should appear but flights of new features from 8 mighty technology engineers, formatted columns, at mentions in news, OneDrive Sync from on-prem, mega menus. Yammer Web Parts, SPFX version 1.7 and Spaces, to just name a few. With the hum of a cluster of CPU drivers, a multi-gigahertz leaper, I knew at that moment it must be Jeff Teeper. More rapid than 16 parallel cores crawling 50 zettabytes in an array, he published, he posted, and instant messaged them onward that day. Now Harmitz, now Masner, now Shaheen and more, on Verk, on Hayon, on Kogan, and Pierce. Those are the mighty engineers. To the top of the data center, out to the edge of the threat-protected firewall. Now launch away, general availability to all. As I return to multi-factor authenticate my creds, down the 15th floor fire escape Jeff Teeper stepped, wearing Chuck Taylor treads. He was dressed in a shirt of OneDrive blue, pants of SharePoint teal, business casual redesigned with the 21st century office icon appeal. A bundle of features he had flung from his roadmap sack, laying out numerous user, IT, and dev scenarios, all met with mighty crowd roars that echoed all the way to the back. A wink of his eye and a click from his last Q&A slide morphed the fruitful roadmap of SharePoint, no longer to hide. He spoke no more words, let the final animation do the talking. Innovations filled our environments, no more rollout blockers blocking. He sprang to catch his Redmond, Washington flight, just as Chris had just there, to his team, gave a confident nod. Away they all flew like an overclocked, water-cooled gaming rig mod. And I heard him disclose one more thing to all attendees throughout the SP Fest joint. If you don't share, what's the point? Thank you all for coming. Thank you for joining us for an almost live, the Intrazone event here in Chicago. The SharePoint Fest, I hope, was a great week for you. It was a great week for us. And taping this live in front of you and with our panelists and, of course, with our customer was a great honor for us to be here, and obviously the willingness for you to attend. So we want to thank you for being great attendees. Hopefully, please thank the people who put on the event, David, Sharon, and team. They did a wonderful job. And thank you for,
Let's hear it for them.
being a part.
Of course, it's important. We want you to listen and subscribe to our Intrazone podcast, your show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet. Go to https://aka.ms/theintrazone or search for the Intrazone wherever you get your podcasts. And for those of you listening during the holidays, what better gift can you give someone than a subscription to the Intrazone?
Yes, thank you. We are your hosts, Chris McNulty, Mark Cashman. Thank you absolutely for your attention.
To keep up with what's going on, we always encourage you to attend one or as many as possible of our upcoming SharePoint and Office 365 community events. With special thanks to SharePoint Fest. Our next SharePoint Fest will be held in Washington, D.C., April 29th through May 3rd, 2019. You can register at www.sharepointfest.com/DC.
Next, you should consider really throughout the year SharePoint Saturdays. These are exceptional opportunities for users in IT to learn from and engage with their local community. They're free, which is the best part, but really the best part is the community and the speakers and the attendees that come. And there's a lot coming up in 2019. There is on January 5th in the city of Coimbatore in South India. January 11th, Virginia Beach, Virginia, and January 19th in both San Diego, California, and in St. Louis, Missouri. Go to spsevents.org to find a SharePoint Saturday near you. 100% worth it, 100% regional, very, very, very distinct in terms of excellence of speakers and attendees to get that conversation going throughout the year.
You know, on the SharePoint and OneDrive team, we love to bring ourselves and our engineering colleagues out to talk to the community. But we have also just kicked off the entirety of Microsoft, heading out of Ignite to bring Ignite to a local city near you. 17 cities around the world. Upcoming Ignite the Tour will be landing in Toronto, January 10th through 11th, Singapore, January 16th, Tel Aviv, January 22nd, and Milan, January 31st. So get your concert tour shirts printed early.
Talk about Ignite in a box. Those are going to be great sessions. I know we finalized the content, working on speakers throughout the year, and the first set of speakers are ready to roll. The next big thing that we want to get your brains ticking around, not only to think about registration, making sure that you've asked your manager for that time to go visit us when we have the SharePoint conference. And that is coming up in May of 2019. We're back at the MGM Grand Las Vegas. And this particular event is co-produced by Microsoft and the SharePoint conference team. We have 150 plus speakers planned across 200 plus sessions, lots of workshops, about 20 of those, and a really, really great exhibit hall with about 100 plus partners there to show their most recent wares, to show their solutions, to talk about what it is they offer on top of Office 365, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams. There's so much that's going to be crammed into the SPC this year. It's a no-miss, a no-brainer.
We're already working on the next round of innovations that we want to share with you. And people always ask, what's coming next? Well, come to SPC and find out.
Absolutely. Please register today. The registration is open at sharepointna.com, and we'll have links to all these events in the show notes. Don't miss big, small, medium, large, here and there events everywhere.
So that's a wrap for our final episode of the IntraZone for 2018. We want to extend a special thanks, of course, for doing a live broadcast to our sponsors, Contoso Electronics, maker of the Invisible Drone, and of course, Tailspin Airlines, the official travel partner of the IntraZone. On a more serious note, a very deep thanks to our guests, Sarah Haase, Wes Preston, Drew Madelung, Treb Gott, and Rachel Davis.
We also want to give a big thank you and appreciation to the SP Fest organizers, David Wilhelm, Sharon Toller, and team, for putting together another successful event. A lot of great speakers throughout the week, a great support for the AMA and the IntraZone for something that we wanted to try out. Wouldn't have been possible without their assistance. And just for the fact that they support and drive a lot of great interest throughout the year at the number of cities that they're at.
We encourage you to visit our show page for resources and links to everything we discussed in today's episode. Go to aka.ms/theintrazone.
And please send us your thoughts, your questions, your curiosities. Fill out the survey that we have out there at aka.ms/intrazone survey. We want to collect everything that you want to hear on the show. We want to hear what your success stories are. You can also reach us via email at theintrazone@microsoft.com or via Twitter at SharePoint, at mcashman, and at cmcnulty2000.
If you like the show, share it, rate it, review it, play it on Bluetooth speakers in mass transit, and tell all your coworkers and peers about it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, yes, and yes. Thank you so much for listening. And of course, if you were in Chicago, for watching. We are your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty. This has been The IntraZone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet.